Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, if a woman conceives and gives birth to a boy, she will be unclean for 7 days, with the same uncleanness as in Nidah, and she is having her menstrual period. On the 8th day, the baby's foreskin is to be circumcised. She is to wait an additional 33 days to be purified from her blood. She is not to touch any holy thing or come into the sanctuary until the time of her purification is over. But if she gives birth to a girl, she will be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her nidah, and she is to wait another 66 days to be purified from her blood. When the days of her purification are over, whether for a son or for a daughter, she is to bring a lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting, to the Kohen. He will offer it before Adonai and make atonement for her. Thus she will be purified from her discharge of blood. Such is the law for a woman who gives birth, whether to a boy or to a girl. If she can't afford a lamb, she is to take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. The Kohen will make atonement for her, and she will be clean. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, if someone develops on his skin a swelling, scab, or bright spot which could develop into the disease Zarat, he is to be brought to Aharon the Kohen or to one of his sons who are Kohanim. The Kohen is to examine the sore in his skin. If the hair in the sore has turned white, and the sore appears to go deep into the skin, it is Zarat. And after examining him, the Kohen is to declare him unclean. If the bright spot on his skin is white, but it does not appear to go deep into the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 days. On the 7th day, the Kohen is to examine him again. And if the sore appears the same as before and has not spread on the skin, then the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the Kohen is to examine him again. If the sore has faded and hasn't spread on the skin, then the Kohen is to declare him clean. It is only a scab, so he is to wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads further on the skin after he has been examined by the Kohen and declared clean, he is to let himself be examined yet again by the Kohen. The Kohen will examine him, and if he sees that the scab is spread on his skin, then the Kohen will declare him unclean. It is Zarat. If a person has Zarat, he is to be brought to the Kohen. The Kohen will examine him, and if he sees that there is a white swelling on the skin, which has turned the hair white and inflamed flesh on the skin, then it is a chronic Zarat on his skin, and the Kohen is to declare him unclean. He is not to isolate him, because it is already clear that he is unclean. If the Zarat breaks out all over the skin so that as far as the Kohen can see, the person with Zarat has sores everywhere on his body, from his head to his feet, then the Kohen is to examine him, and if he sees that the Zarat has covered his entire body, he is to pronounce the person with the sores clean. It has all turned white, and he is clean. But if one day inflamed flesh appears on him, he will be unclean. The Kohen will examine the inflamed flesh and declare him unclean. The inflamed flesh is unclean, and it is Zarat. However, if the inflamed flesh again turns white, he is to come to the Kohen. The Kohen will examine him, and if he sees that the sores have turned white, then the Kohen is to declare clean the person with the sores. He is clean. If a person has on his skin a boil that heals in such a way that in the place of the boil where is a white swelling or a reddish-white bright spot, it is to be shown to the Kohen. The Kohen is to examine it. If he sees that it appears to be more than skin deep, and its hair has turned white, then the Kohen is to pronounce him unclean. The disease of Zarat has broken out on the boil. But if the Kohen looks at it and doesn't see any white hairs in it, and it isn't more than skin deep but appears faded, the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 days. If it spreads on the skin, the Kohen is to declare him unclean. It is the disease. But if the bright spot stays where it was and has not spread, It is the scar of the boil, and the Kohen is to declare him clean. Or if someone has on his skin a burn caused by fire, and the inflamed flesh where it was burned has become a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the Kohen is to examine it. And if he sees that the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and that it appears to be deeper than the skin around it, it is zerat. It has broken out in the burn, and the Kohen is to declare him unclean. It is a sore from zerat. If the Kohen examines it and sees no white hair in the bright spot, and it is no lower than the skin around it, but looks faded, then the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 days. On the 7th day, the Kohen is to examine him. If it has spread on the skin, then the Kohen is to declare him unclean. It is a sore from zerat. But if the bright spot stays where it was, and it has not spread on the skin, but appears faded, it is swelling due to the burn, and the Kohen is to declare him clean, because it is only a scar from the burn. If a man or a woman has a sore on the head, or a man in his beard, and the Kohen is to examine the sore. If he sees that it appears to be deeper than the skin around it with yellow, thin hair in it, then the Kohen is to declare him unclean. It is a crusted area, a zerat of the head or the beard. If the Kohen examines the diseased crusted area and sees that it appears not to be deeper than the skin around it and without any black hair in it, then the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 days, the person with the diseased crusted area. On the 7th day, the Kohen is to examine the sore, and if he sees that the crusted area hasn't spread, that it has no yellow hair in it, and that the crusted hair area is not deeper than the skin around it, then the person is to be shaved, except for the crusted area, and the Kohen is to isolate him for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the Kohen is to examine the crusted area, and if he sees that the crusted area has not spread on the skin and does not appear to be deeper than the skin around it, then the Kohen is to declare him clean. He is to wash his clothes and be clean. But if the crusted area spreads his purification, then the Kohen is to examine him. If he sees that the crusted area has spread on the skin, the Kohen is not to look for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if the crusted area's appearance doesn't change and the black hair grows up in it, then the crusted area is healed. He is clean, and the Kohen is to declare him clean. If a man or a woman has bright spots on their skin, bright white spots, then the Kohen is to examine them. If he sees that the bright spots on the skin are dull white, it is only a rash that is broken out on the skin, he is clean. If a man's hair has fallen from his scalp, he is bald, but he is clean. If the hair has fallen off the front part of his head, he is forehead bald, but he is clean. But if the bald scalp or forehead there is a reddish white sore, it is a rot breaking out on the scalp or forehead. Then the Kohen is to examine him. And if he sees that there is a reddish white swelling on his bald scalp or forehead, appearing like zerat on the rest of the body, he is a person with zerat. He is unclean. The Kohen must declare him unclean, and the sore is on his head. Everyone who has zerat sores is to wear torn clothes and unbound hair, cover his upper lip, and cry, "Unclean, unclean." As long as he has sores, he will be unclean. Since he is unclean, he must live in isolation. He must live outside the camp. When zerat infects an article of clothing, whether it be a woolen or a linen garment, on the threads of the woven in parts of either linen or wool, or on a hide or item made of leather, then if the stain on the garment, hide, threads, woven in parts, or leather item is greenish or reddish, it is an infection of zerat and is to be shown to the Kohen. The Kohen is to examine the stain and isolate the article that has the infection for 7 days. On the 7th day, he is to examine the stain. If the stain has spread on the garment, threads, woven in parts, or leather, whatever its use, The infection is contagious, Zerat, and the garment is unclean. He is to burn the garment, threads woven in parts of either wool or linen, or item of leather having the infection, for it is a contagious Zerat. It must be burned up completely. But if, when the Kohen examines it, and he sees that the infection has not spread on the garment or in the threads woven in parts or leather item, then the Kohen is to order that the article having the infection be washed and isolated for 7 more days. The Kohen is to examine it after the stain has been washed, and if he sees that the stain has not been changed, or not changed color, then even though the stain has not spread, it is unclean. You are to burn it up completely. It is rotten, no matter whether the spot is on the outside or the inside. If the Kohen examines it and sees that the stain has faded after being washed, then he is to tear the stain out of the garment, leather, threads, or woven in parts. If it appears again in the garment, threads, woven in parts, or leather item, it is contagious, and you are to burn up completely the article that had the stain. But if the infection is gone from the garment, threads, woven in parts, or leather item that you washed, then it is to be washed a second time, and it will be clean. This is the law concerning infections of Zerat in the garment of wool or linen, or in the thread, or the woven in parts, or in any leather item, when to declare it clean and when to declare it unclean. Adonai said to Moshe, "This is to be the law concerning the person afflicted with Zerat. On the day of his purification he is to be brought to the Kohen, and the Kohen is to go outside the camp and examine him there. If he sees that the Zerat sores have been healed in the afflicted person, then the Kohen will order that 2 living, clean birds be taken for the one to be purified, along with the cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop leaves. The Kohen is to order one of the birds slaughtered in a clay pot over running water. As for the live bird, he is to take it with the cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop, and dip them in the living bird of the blood of the bird slaughtered over running water, and sprinkle the person to be purified from the Zerat 7 times. Next, he is to set the live bird free in an open field. He is to be purified and must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe himself in water. Then he will be clean. After that, he may enter the camp, but he must live outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, he is to shave all the hair off his head, also his beard and eyebrows. He must shave all of his hair off, and he is to wash his clothes and bathe in his body, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he is to take 2 male lambs without defect, 1 female lamb in its first year without defect, and 6.5 quarts of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with olive oil, and 2/3 of a pint of olive oil. The Kohen purifying him is to place the person being purified with those items before Adonai at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The Kohen is to take one of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering with the 2/3 pint of olive oil. Then wave them as a wave offering before Adonai. He is to slaughter the male lamb at the place in the sanctuary for slaughtering sin offerings and burnt offerings, because the guilt offering belongs to the Kohen. Just like the sin offering, it is especially holy. The Kohen is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of the person being purified, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Next, the Kohen is to take some of the 2/3 pint of olive oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. Dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand and sprinkle from the oil with his finger 7 times before Adonai. Then the Kohen is to put some of the remaining oil in his hand and on the tip of the right ear of the person being purified, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. Finally, the Kohen is to put the rest of the oil in his hand and the head of the person being purified, and on the head, and the Kohen will make atonement for him before Adonai. The Kohen is to offer the sin offering and make atonement for the person being purified, because of his uncleanness afterwards. He is to slaughter the burnt offering. The Kohen is to offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. Thus the Kohen will make the atonement for him, and he will be clean. If he is poor so that he can't afford to do otherwise, he is to take one male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, 2 quarts of fine flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, 2/3 of a pint of olive oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he can afford, the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he will bring them to the Kohen for his purification, to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Adonai. The Kohen is to take the lamb of the guilt offering and the 2/3 of a pint of olive oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Adonai. He is to slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and the Kohen is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of the person being purified, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The Kohen is to take some of the olive oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and sprinkle with his right hand some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Adonai. The Kohen is to put some of the oil in his hand and on the tip of the right ear of the person being purified, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, in the same place as the blood of the guilt offering. Finally, the Kohen is to put the rest of the oil in his hand on the head of the person being purified, to make atonement for him before Adonai. He is to offer one of the doves or young pigeons, such as the person can afford. Whatever his means suffice, for the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, with the grain offering. Thus the Kohen will make atonement before Adonai for the person being purified. Such is the law for the person who has zerat sores, if he cannot afford the usual elements used for his purification. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "When you have entered the land of Canaan, which I am giving to you as a possession, and I put an infection of zerat in a house, and the land that you possess, then the owner of the house is to come and tell the Kohen, 'It seems to me that there may be an infection in the house.' The Kohen is to order the house emptied before he goes in to inspect the infection, so that everything in the house won't be made unclean afterwards. The Kohen is to enter and inspect the house. He will examine the infection, and if he sees that the infection is in the walls of the house, with greenish or reddish depressions that seem to go in deeper than the surface of the wall, he is to go out of the house to its door and seal up the house for 7 days. The Kohen will come again on the 7th day and examine the house. If he sees that the infection has spread over its walls, he is to order them to remove the infected stones and throw them into some unclean place outside the city. Next, he is to have the inside of the house thoroughly scraped, and the scraped-off plasters to be discarded outside the city in an unclean place. Finally, other stones must be set in the place of the first stones, and the other plaster used to replaster the house. If the infection returns and breaks out in the house after the stones have been removed and the house scraped and plastered, then the Kohen is to enter and examine it. If he sees that the infection has spread in the house, it is a contagious zerat in the house. It is unclean. He must break down the house and take its stones, timber, and plaster out of the city to an unclean place. Moreover, whoever enters the house at any time while it is sealed up will be unclean until evening. Whoever lies down or eats in the house must wash his clothes. If the Kohen enters, examines, and sees that the infection has not spread in the house since it was plastered, then he is to declare the house clean, because the infection is cured. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop leaves. He is to slaughter one of the birds in a clay pot over running water. And he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He will purify the house with the blood of the bird, the running water, and the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. But he is to set the live bird free outside the city in an open field. Thus he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. Such is the law for all the kinds of Zerat sores. For a crusted sore, crusted area, for Zerat in a house, in a garment, for a house, for a swelling, for a scab, in a bright spot, to determine when it is clean and when it is unclean. This is the law concerning Zerat. Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "Tell the people of Israel, when any man has discharge from his body, the discharge is unclean. The discharge is unclean no matter whether it continues flowing or has stopped. It is uncleanness. Every bed which the person with the discharge lies on is unclean, and everything he sits on is unclean. Whoever touches his bed is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. Whoever sits on anything that the person with discharge sat on is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches the body of the person with the discharge is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He is to be unclean until evening. If the person with the discharge spits on someone who is unclean, the latter is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. Any saddle that the person with the discharge rides on will be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him will be unclean until evening. He who carries those things is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. If the person with the discharge fails to rinse his hands in water before touching someone, that person is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. If the person with the discharge touches a clay pot, it must be broken. If he touches a wooden utensil, it must be rinsed in water. When a person with a discharge has become free of it, he is to count 7 days for his purification. Then he is to wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water. After that, he will be clean. On the 8th day, he is to take himself 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, come before Adonai to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and give them to the Kohen. The Kohen is to offer them. The one is a sin offering, and the other is a burnt offering. Thus, the Kohen will make atonement for him on account of his discharge before Adonai. If a man has a seminal emission, he is to bathe his entire body in water. He will be unclean until evening. Any clothing or leather on which there is any semen is to be washed with water. It will be unclean until evening. If a man goes to bed with a woman and has sexual relations, both are to bathe themselves in water, and they will be unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge and the discharge from her body is blood, she will be in her state of nidah for 7 days. Whoever touches her will be unclean until evening. Everything she lies on or sits on is in the state of nidah will be unclean. In her state of nidah will be unclean. Whoever touches her bed is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and he will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything she sits on is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. Whether he is on the bed or on something she sits on, when he touches it, he will be unclean until evening. If a man goes to bed with her and her menstrual flow touches him, he will be unclean 7 days, and every bed he lies on will be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days not during her period, or if her discharge lasts beyond the normal end of her period, then throughout the time she is having an unclean discharge, she will be as when she is in nidah, she is unclean. Every bed she lies on at any point while she is having her discharge will be for her like the bed she uses during her time of nidah, and everything she sits on will be unclean, with uncleanness like that of her time of nidah. Whoever touches those things will be unclean, and he is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. He will be unclean until evening. If she has become free of her discharge, she is to count 7 days. After that she will be clean. On the 8th day she is to take for herself 2 doves, or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the Kohen at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The Kohen is to offer the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for her before Adonai on account of her unclean discharge. In this way you will separate the people of Israel from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in a state of uncleanness for defiling my tabernacle, which is there with them. Such is the law for the person who has a discharge, for the man who has a seminal emission that makes him unclean, for the woman in nidah during her menstrual period, and for the person, man or woman, with a discharge, and the man who has sexual relations with a woman who is unclean.